Chapter 1. The Man Behind the Empire. Robert Bobby Donovan wasn't the kind of man you found sipping cocktails at golf clubs or lounging by the sea with designer shades on. No, Bobby was forged by sweat, calluses, and sleepless ambition. The man who now wore bespoke suits and held stakes in luxury hotels from Manhattan to Milan had once mopped floors in motels off the freeway, silently promising himself he would someday own buildings like the ones that overlooked him. He came from nothing. South Side Chicago. Single mother. No silver spoon, just cold winters, duct tape sneakers, and secondhand dreams. When he was 18, he left home with a backpack, a toolbox, and the kind of hunger that turned average men into legends. Over 2 decades later, that hunger still burned. Only now it was sharpened, contained behind tailored suits, slick boardroom deals, and a private jet with his initials engraved on the mahogany armrest. Despite the empire he built, the multi-billion-dollar Donovan Hospitality Group, famous for its grand, artistic hotels, Bobby never tried to erase where he came from. He still tipped janitors more than executives, still called every bellhop by name, still carried that Chicago grit like an invisible badge under his crisp shirts. But his proudest title wasn't CEO or billionaire. It was husband and father. He met Linda Prescott at a charity event when he was still a nobody, just a promising hotelier overseeing his third property. She had walked in like she owned the city, a vision in white and pearls, laughing at something shallow said by a hedge fund heir. She was class, old money, refined, educated at Vassar, born into country clubs and art galleries. And yet, she had noticed Bobby. "Why aren't you speaking?" she had asked, wine glass poised delicately in her hand. He had shrugged. "I'm better at listening. It's how I learn what people really mean." That line, half flirty, half sincere, had made her smile. A real smile. And soon, Linda was riding shotgun in Bobby's beat-up Lexus, eating tacos from a food truck after her fundraisers. It had been a whirlwind. Against all odds, they married 2 years later. Old money met new grit. The wedding had been tasteful but opulent, mostly Linda's crowd, politicians, society women, doctors, and CEOs. Bobby's side had been smaller. His mother, a few friends from the construction sites, and some investors who'd bet on his vision early. He didn't care. He had Linda. For 24 years, they had built a life together. A home so grand, it was featured in magazines. 2 beautiful children, Ashley and Michael, who had the best of both worlds. Bobby's sharp instincts and Linda's poise. He gave Linda everything, anything she asked for. When she said she wanted to launch a children's hospital foundation, Bobby wrote the checks and built her a gala-worthy platform. When she wanted a summer home in Lake Como, he bought it in cash. And through it all, Bobby remained loyal, faithful, grounded, even as Linda changed. At first, it was little things. She corrected his grammar in front of guests. She cringed when he mentioned his upbringing at formal dinners. She began saying things like, "You really shouldn't say ain't in meetings. People notice." Or, "Maybe leave your union stories out of the speeches. They don't exactly land in Palm Beach." He had laughed it off. "You knew I was a grease monkey in a hard hat when you married me." "Yes," she'd replied, with a carefully measured smile. "But you don't have to stay one forever, do you?" Bobby told himself it was just Linda's way. She was sharp, cultured, meticulous about image. But as years went by, her critiques stopped sounding like jokes and started cutting deeper. She started traveling more. Fundraisers in D.C., galas in Europe. Always networking, always polished, always out of reach. Bobby didn't complain. He supported her always. He made sure she had everything she needed. But somewhere in the silence between their passing hallway greetings and formal dinner appearances, something hollow had begun to take shape. They no longer sat on the balcony, sipping wine together. No longer had late-night talks in bed about the kids or dreams for their future. Their conversations had shrunk down to logistics and appearances. Ashley noticed it first. "Mom doesn't smile the same way anymore when she's around you," she once said casually, over brunch in the penthouse kitchen. "She smiles for the camera, not for you." Bobby had waved it off. "She's tired. Fundraising season." Ashley had just nodded, lips pressed tight. She didn't believe it. Neither did Bobby, if he was honest. Still, he tried harder. More gifts. More dinners. He planned a surprise getaway to Maui for their anniversary. She said she had a conference in Toronto. He rescheduled. She canceled again. When he pressed, she got defensive. You don't understand what it's like, Bobby. You have your empire. I have my work too. It matters. I never said it didn't. Then stop acting like I'm the villain for being busy. The words didn't hurt as much as the ice in her eyes when she said them, as if she no longer saw him, not as a partner, not as the man who built a kingdom with her by his side. He told himself it was just a rough patch. Then came the strange phone calls. She would leave the room to answer them. Her voice would soften, almost flirtatious, and when she came back, her demeanor would shift, cooler, distracted. Once, Bobby walked in on her hurriedly deleting a message from her phone. She smiled quickly, said it was foundation business. He didn't say anything. He simply nodded and left the room. But his mind didn't rest. She used to call him Bobby. Now she called him Robert in front of friends, in a tone more formal than affectionate. She stopped reaching for his hand in public. She didn't kiss his cheek before he left for meetings anymore. One night, she arrived late to a dinner party he'd planned for their anniversary, 3 hours late. She was wearing a different dress than the one he bought her for the occasion. When he asked where she had been, she smiled faintly and said, "Networking. It's important for donors." He stared at her for a moment. Something in her tone made his skin crawl. He wasn't a fool. He hadn't clawed his way to the top of an industry crawling with sharks just to ignore the scent of blood when it drifted into his own home. Something was wrong. And Bobby, Donovan was no longer pretending he didn't see it. Chapter 2. The Perfect Facade Cracks. Bobby Donovan stood on the balcony of their Manhattan penthouse, coffee cooling in his hand as the city buzzed far below. The skyline had once excited him, each tower a symbol of ambition. Now it looked sterile, unfeeling, just like the woman sleeping inside. He heard her footsteps before he turned. "Morning," Linda said without looking at him, gliding past in a silk robe, hair already perfect. Bobby took a sip. "You're up early." She poured herself sparkling water. "I have a breakfast meeting at the Children's Foundation. New donors flying in from Geneva." Bobby studied her. Her voice had become clipped. Her tone had an edge to it. Like every word she spoke to him was something to be tolerated. "I'll be at the Roosevelt site later. We're finalizing the contract with the Italian designers." "That's nice," she said flatly, already thumbing through her phone. "Just don't let them talk you into those tacky marble lion statues. It's a hotel, not a mafia compound." He chuckled once dryly. "You used to love those touches." "Yes, well, taste evolves." She disappeared down the hallway. Bobby stood there a moment longer, coffee untouched. The changes weren't sudden, but they were sharp. Linda had grown colder, dismissive, and worst of all, condescending. Not just in private, but increasingly in front of others. At a gala dinner 2 weeks prior, she had interrupted him mid-story. "Darling," she said, patting his arm with a stiff smile. "Not everyone here is fluent in construction site war stories. Let's not bore them." The table had laughed awkwardly. Bobby's jaw clenched, but he smiled through it. He didn't say a word the rest of the evening. She didn't notice. Ashley noticed everything. She was her father's daughter, intelligent, razor-sharp, always watching. They were walking together through the open lobby of one of Bobby's newer hotels downtown, checking design details. "You know she's mocking you now," Ashley said bluntly, her long coat trailing behind her heels. "She doesn't even try to hide it." Bobby sighed. "It's complicated. She treats you like you're an embarrassment, Dad. She's under pressure. The foundation's expanding, and she's planning her retirement." Ashley stopped walking and turned to face him. "And you're making excuses for her again." He looked at her, his 22-year-old daughter, already one of the youngest VPs in his company. She had Linda's elegance, but his fire. "She's still your mother." Ashley's jaw tightened. "Yeah, and she hasn't asked how I am in 6 months." The facade began crumbling faster. Linda no longer joined him for board dinners. She started arriving at events separately, wearing jewelry he hadn't seen before. She dismissed his suggestions at fundraisers with a tight-lipped smile and phrases like, "Let me handle the optics, Robert." It was always Robert now, never Bobby. One evening, he overheard her on a phone call from his study, her voice low, laughing softly. She didn't see him in the hallway. No, you always say that. Stop. I'll blush. A pause. Next week, same place. But no more surprises. Victor. Victor. Bobby stood in the shadows, his chest tight, and listened as she ended the call with a whisper. Can't wait to feel your arms again. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he called someone from his old life. A fixer. A man named Prescott. Not related to Linda. The kind of man you trusted with secrets and sensitive truths. I need you to follow someone, Bobby said on the phone. Discreetly. No mess. Understood. Wife. Bobby didn't answer. He became more observant. Linda began deleting texts quickly, turning her phone screen away when he entered her room. Her wardrobe shifted, new dresses, newer heels. She traveled more, using foundation events as cover. She even changed her perfume. For 24 years, she'd worn a soft lavender scent. Now it was sharp, spiced, designed to be noticed. At night, she rolled to the far side of the bed. Conversations became one-sided. She'd talk about her guest speaker panel, her donor receptions, her private lunches with colleagues. Once, Bobby asked, "Do you still see us in your future?" She looked up from her laptop, expression unreadable. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not. I'm just wondering where I fit in your world anymore." Linda stared at him, then said with a practiced calm, "You should focus on what you're good at, Bobby. Building hotels. Let me handle my life." Then came the announcement. Over dinner, an obligatory affair at a high-end restaurant in Tribeca, Linda clinked her glass. "I'm retiring," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've decided it's time to pass the torch and step down from the foundation." Bobby blinked. "That's a big change. When?" "Next month. I've already begun planning the retirement gala. It's going to be spectacular." He studied her. "And you didn't tell me?" "I'm telling you now." Ashley, seated across the table, lowered her wine glass. "What's the theme? Queen of Hearts? Or Farewell to Decency?" Linda raised an eyebrow. "It's a celebration of legacy. The foundation's grown tremendously under my leadership." Bobby nodded slowly. "So, I take it this will be quite the spectacle?" "Oh, of course," Linda said, practically glowing. "Media, donors, society friends. And I want it held at the Donovan Grand." Bobby leaned back, his mind already spinning. That was his flagship hotel, the crown jewel. Hosting her retirement party there, it was strategic, symbolic, a stage. She wasn't just stepping down. She was making a statement. "I assume I'm invited?" he asked, tone neutral. Linda tilted her head. "Of course. It's our story too, isn't it?" Ashley scoffed. "More like her version of it." That night, Bobby sat in his study long after everyone went to bed. On his desk were 2 files from the private investigator. Photos, logs, hotel receipts, surveillance notes. Victor Hayes, investment banker, twice divorced, known womanizer, and apparently very familiar with Linda's new schedule. Bobby stared at a photo of Linda and Victor leaving a restaurant. Her arm looped in his. Her eyes lit up in a way Bobby hadn't seen in years. He closed the folder, and then, slowly, he opened a drawer and pulled out a notebook, the one he used when launching new ventures. It was empty. For now, Linda moved through the next few weeks with manic focus, flitting between fittings, meetings with event planners, and private calls she always took behind closed doors. She floated above the household, acting as if her world was separate from Bobby's. Let her have her performance, he thought. Let her build her little fantasy stage. He would be there when the curtain dropped. Chapter 3. A Toast to Betrayal. The chandeliers sparkled like frozen constellations above the marble ballroom of the Donovan Grand, the crown jewel of Bobby's empire. Crystal glasses clinked, forks grazed fine china, and a low hum of soft jazz wove through conversations about philanthropy, global markets, and art auctions. It was a night sculpted for the elite, the kind of evening that looked perfect on the surface, even as rot festered just beneath. Linda Donovan was in her element. She stood in the center of the ballroom in a champagne silk gown, her diamond necklace catching every light in the room. She floated from table to table like a seasoned queen holding court, offering practiced smiles, kisses on the cheek, and graceful laughter that hit a blade behind every syllable. Bobby watched her from their shared table at the front of the room, flanked by his daughter Ashley and several high-profile guests from the media and foundation boards. His tailored tux fit perfectly, his expression unreadable. To anyone watching, he was the proud husband at his wife's farewell gala. Only Ashley saw the tension in his jaw, the weight behind his silence. "I can't believe she's doing this here," Ashley muttered under her breath, sipping her wine slowly. "She picked this place for a reason," Bobby replied, eyes fixed on Linda. "It's not just a party. It's a performance." Ashley's eyes narrowed. "She's trying to humiliate you in the very house you built." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The room hushed slightly as Linda stepped toward the microphone on the stage, the hotel's signature logo shimmering behind her. She smiled with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice clear, cultured, commanding. "Tonight is not just a celebration of my retirement, but a tribute to legacy, to purpose, and to the people who have shaped my journey." Applause broke out, short, polite. She paused, scanning the room. "I've spent over 2 decades building a foundation that has touched thousands of children's lives. But behind every public success is a private story, and tonight I want to honor the people who truly made me proud, my real family." Bobby straightened in his chair. "My children," she continued, smiling wider now. "Jason and Emily, my beautiful, compassionate children from my first marriage. They have stood beside me, inspired me, and made me the woman I am today." The ballroom erupted into applause. Ashley's face hardened. She did," Bobby murmured. Linda continued, not even glancing toward the table where Ashley sat frozen and furious. "They've carried my values. They've never questioned who I am. I am proud of them in ways I can't fully express. They're my real legacy." Silence clung to the edges of the room as Linda turned slowly, her gaze landing on Bobby like frost. "And as for Robert," she said smoothly, "thank you for the hotel, and for the years. But I think we all know your chapter in my story ends here." A few polite chuckles echoed from the unaware, but most fell into confused silence. "You can leave now," she added, her voice sharper, more deliberate. The room stopped breathing. Bobby didn't flinch. He slowly rose from his chair, one hand on the edge of the table. And then Ashley stood too. Every head turned. She didn't look at her father. Her glare was fixed entirely on her mother. "No," Ashley said, her voice cutting clean through the stunned hush. "You can stop pretending now." Linda blinked. "Ashley, don't," Ashley interrupted, stepping forward. Her heels echoed across the ballroom floor. "You don't get to erase me and Michael just because you've decided to rewrite your life with Victor's children as your new props." A murmur rippled through the crowd. All eyes locked on the confrontation. Ashley stopped at the foot of the stage, face flushed with fury. "I've watched you diminish Dad for years. I watched you roll your eyes at his stories, correct his grammar in public, act like his love and sacrifices weren't enough for your precious social circle." Linda's face paled slightly. "You think these people here don't know who built this empire? You think they don't know whose hands shaped every corner of this hotel, whose name is literally on the building?" Bobby sat back down slowly, his eyes meeting Ashley's, filled with a quiet, stunned pride. "And now," Ashley continued, her voice rising, "you want to act like Victor's children are your real legacy? The same Victor you've been sneaking around with for over a year? The same married man who calls you from burner phones and books suites under fake names?" Gasps exploded from every corner of the room. Linda's expression finally cracked. Ashley turned, eyes sweeping across the stunned guests. "Let's not pretend. My mother is no hero. She's a fraud. She used my father's money to fund her affair. She used donor money to hide private trips. She lied to all of you, and she wants to throw him away like an accessory that no longer matches her shoes." Linda stumbled a step back. The room had turned. Everyone now stared, waiting, whispering. And then, slowly, from the edge of the ballroom, another figure stepped forward. Patricia Hayes. Elegant, poised, dressed in deep navy with diamond earrings that caught the light just enough. Victor Hayes' wife. She walked slowly, deliberately, up the small steps to the platform where Linda stood frozen. "Good evening," Patricia said into the microphone, her voice calm as ice. "My name is Patricia Hayes. For those who don't know, I'm Victor's actual wife." A wave of awkward coughs and shifting chairs rustled through the crowd. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," she continued smoothly, "but seeing as my husband's mistress is making declarations about family and legacy, I thought I'd share some facts." Linda's lips parted, but no words came out. Patricia turned to face the crowd. Over the past 12 months, Linda Donovan and Victor Hayes have embezzled over $22 million from donor trust funds using a network of offshore shell accounts. "We have documentation, signed transactions, and falsified tax filings. A full forensic audit was completed 3 days ago. Everything is in federal hands now." Dead silence. The room was stone. Patricia looked back at Linda. "You chose the spotlight tonight, Linda. I hope you're enjoying it." She stepped away from the microphone and left the stage. Bobby exhaled through his nose, silent. Ashley remained at the front, facing her mother, voice trembling now but still strong. "You could have just left with some grace, Mom, but you had to turn it into a show. Now everyone knows the truth." Linda said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Chapter 4. A daughter's wrath, a father's resolve. The ballroom of the Donovan Grand was no longer a celebration hall. It had become a courtroom without walls, its audience stunned into silence, their champagne glasses trembling like evidence in shaking hands. Linda stood frozen on stage, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, her carefully sculpted mask cracked and slipping. Her expensive gown, once a symbol of sophistication, now seemed like a costume for a play no one wanted to watch anymore. Ashley stepped down from the platform slowly, each heel click echoing like a verdict being read aloud. Her face, pale but burning with resolve, turned to the guests as she passed. "If anyone else needs clarification," she said with icy clarity, "I'll be happy to provide documents. But for now, my father and I have better things to do than stay in this farce of a room." The crowd didn't respond. No applause, no protest. Just awkward shifting, a few stunned faces hiding behind napkins or clutched phones. Bobby stood from his seat, calm and composed in his tailored tux, looking every inch the man who built empires and survived fire. He gently placed a hand on Ashley's shoulder as she reached his side. She leaned in close, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I couldn't let her get away with it." "You didn't," he said softly, his palm firm on her back. "You reminded the world who she really is. That takes more courage than anything she's ever done." Ashley's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She nodded and straightened her spine. "Let's go." They turned together and began walking through the stunned crowd. People parted like water around them, unable to meet Bobby's eyes, yet unable to look away. Some whispered apologies. Others simply stared in shock, unsure of what had just unraveled in front of them. Linda remained at the podium, abandoned and shaking, her mouth twitching as though she wanted to shout, to scream, to deny. But no words came. Not now. Not after what had just been revealed. As they stepped into the hotel's private elevator, Ashley exhaled sharply, her hand trembling in Bobby's. "I don't know if I feel relieved or sick," she admitted. "You'll feel both for a while," Bobby replied, calm but serious. "The truth has a way of rattling the bones before it sets them straight again." The doors closed. Upstairs in the executive suite, Bobby poured 2 glasses of whiskey, one for himself, one for Ashley, though she barely touched hers. "I thought she was just lost. Distracted," Ashley said, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. "But she was never just lost, was she? She was leaving. Every step, every lie. She was building a new life without us. She stopped seeing us as people a long time ago," Bobby said, sitting beside her. "We became props, a brand, something to display when needed and discard when inconvenient." Ashley turned to him slowly. "And you still stayed?" "I had to," he said. "I had to protect you. And Michael. And the empire I built so you'd never have to beg anyone for anything." She nodded, tears finally falling. "I'm done with her," she whispered. "She's not my mother anymore." Bobby reached over and gently wiped her cheek with his thumb. You still get to decide who you are. She doesn't write that part. Ashley gripped his hand, holding it tighter than she ever had as a child. So what now? An hour later, back in the ballroom, Patricia Hayes had not left. Unlike Linda, she had no need to retreat. She stood tall in a corner with two attorneys by her side, elegantly sipping mineral water as if she'd just wrapped up a boardroom negotiation, not eviscerated her husband's mistress in front of New York's elite. A few brave guests came over to offer her quiet respect. Others simply avoided her like she was carrying live wire. Linda sat alone now, no longer radiant, her gown rumpled, her expression shattered. Victor was nowhere to be seen, disappeared like a coward after the storm. There would be no closing speech, no graceful farewell. Patricia stepped forward and addressed the crowd one final time, her voice low and lethal. I'll be filing for divorce this week, she said, and pressing criminal charges on both parties. The evidence has already been submitted to the relevant authorities. A murmur swept through the crowd again, heavier this time. If anyone here feels concerned about their association with either Victor Hayes or Linda Donovan, she continued with a cutting smile, you might want to start distancing yourselves tonight. The press has already been briefed. Tomorrow will be lively. She offered a nod, turned on her heel, and exited the room with calm, deadly grace. That night, well past midnight, Bobby sat alone in his study. Ashley had gone to rest, emotionally spent, but not broken. Never broken. The room smelled faintly of bourbon and cedar. A fire crackled on the hearth. Rain tapped against the windows like quiet applause. Bobby stared at a tablet screen, his inbox filled with emails from the investigators he had privately retained weeks earlier. Linda had made one mistake too many, and Bobby, true to form, had not waited to be blindsided. He opened a folder marked Hayes/Donovan Trust Forensic Review. It was all there. Transfers, bank statements, flight records, password-protected files from the offshore accounts. Patricia's forensic accountant had been thorough. A knock came at the door. Patricia stepped in. I figured you'd still be awake, she said, taking a seat without waiting for an invitation. I assume the press will run with this by morning, Bobby said quietly. They will. She folded her arms. I have an editor friend who's already been fed the package. Federal investigators should be moving within the next week. Bobby nodded. Then it's time. Time for what? Patricia asked, though she already knew. To burn it all down, he said, eyes sharp. No more mercy. No more pretending. If she wants to rebuild with Victor's ashes, I'll hand her the match. But I'll make sure it's all she's left holding. Patricia smiled grimly. I've already filed a motion to freeze Victor's personal assets. Once the auditors finish, he'll be lucky if he can afford a motel room. They sat in silence for a moment, two people wronged. Two minds hardened by betrayal. No theatrics. No rage. Only purpose. We do this right, Bobby said, voice low. No drama. No gossip. Just facts, law, and the slow crush of consequence. Patricia raised her glass. To justice. He clinked his against hers. And to the beginning of their end. Chapter 5. Cracks in a Fortress. 2 days after the retirement gala imploded, Victor Hayes stared at his phone in his corner office on the 32nd floor of the Hayes Blackwood Investments building. He was pale beneath his tan, a bead of sweat slipping down his temple despite the icy blast of the office's air conditioning. The headline on his screen read, Breaking. Hospital Foundation funds funneled through offshore accounts linked to Hayes investment firm. Another ping. Another notification. Then another. He threw the phone onto his mahogany desk and cursed. Loudly. Across town, Linda Donovan was faring no better. She sat in her tastefully minimalist sitting room in a silk robe and slippers, staring in disbelief as the local news anchor recited phrases like embezzlement, donor betrayal, and financial mismanagement linked to high-profile retirement party. Her face was stiff, unblinking. This isn't happening, she whispered, tightening her robe like it would shield her from the world. This can't be happening. But it was. The storm had been precise, clinical, ruthless. Bobby Donovan moved like a man who had been betrayed, but was far too calculating to let emotion steer the wheel. The morning after the gala, He met with his legal and financial teams behind closed doors in a private conference room at his company's headquarters. "Freeze the Donovan Family Trust," he said plainly, setting down a thick folder of evidence. "Effective immediately. Linda no longer has signing rights or beneficiary status." One of his lawyers blinked. "She's still legally—" "Not anymore," Bobby interrupted. "She violated multiple clauses in the trust charter the moment she misused charitable funds. I had that clause inserted 15 years ago." A second lawyer opened the folder and swore under his breath. "This is airtight," he said. "If half of this holds up, she's not just out of the trust, she's headed for indictment." "Then we've got work to do," Bobby said coldly. "Let's take their fortress apart brick by brick." By noon, Linda's access to every shared account had been revoked. Her foundation-linked credit cards were declined one after the other. Her personal assistant quit after being served a subpoena. The trust fund's legal control reverted solely to Bobby and Ashley, per the original charter. Meanwhile, Patricia Hayes was playing her role perfectly. From an anonymous burner account, she leaked selected documents to high-ranking journalists. Nothing too overwhelming, just enough to spark scandal without giving up the full trail. Donor withdrawals, flight records, evidence of overlapping vacations between Victor and Linda, paid for through suspicious nonprofit consulting expenses. One drop at a time. The media, always hungry, pounced. By the end of the day, two major donors publicly announced their intent to pull out of Linda's foundation and review the ethics of their affiliation. One went further and requested a formal audit. Ashley Donovan, now running the International Development Division of Donovan Hospitality, stood in the sleek war room of her father's PR headquarters. A giant LED screen displayed a digital map connecting Victor and Linda to half a dozen shell companies, one prominently registered in the Cayman Islands. "We focus on 3 things," Ashley said firmly to the crisis team. "Sympathy for the donors, outrage for the betrayal, and trust in the Donovan name. My father and our company had no part in what Linda did. Period." She was poised, professional, and brutal. A junior associate raised a hand. "What about Michael? Should we hold off until he lands?" Ashley didn't blink. "My brother will understand when he sees what they did. And if he doesn't, I'll show him." Michael Donovan touched down in New York 3 days after the gala, jet-lagged and still unaware of the magnitude of the chaos. He hadn't attended the retirement party. His final exams in London had kept him grounded. He walked through the private terminal with a bag slung over one shoulder, greeted by his father's driver in silence. 30 minutes later, he entered the Donovan penthouse and froze. The foyer that had once been filled with family photos and polished calm was now overtaken by manila folders, whiteboards, and 2 investigators in tailored suits speaking rapidly into earpieces. Ashley spotted him from across the room. "Mike," she said, softening her tone. "You're here." "What the hell is going on?" he asked. Bobby stood from a nearby armchair, his face solemn but resolute. "We didn't want you to hear it secondhand," Bobby said. "Come sit. 20 minutes. That's all it took to break Michael's illusion." Ashley laid it all out. Linda's affair with Victor, the Cayman Islands Shell Company, the fake consulting contracts, and the $22 million in diverted donor money. She spared no detail. She didn't dramatize. Just facts. Michael was pale when she finished. She really did this?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Bobby slid over a single photo, Linda and Victor arm in arm on a yacht off the Amalfi Coast, laughing, champagne in hand. The timestamp matched the day of Michael's birthday 2 years ago. "She told me she was at a board retreat," Michael muttered. "She lied," Bobby said simply. Michael's fingers curled into fists. "And now the media knows? The whole world." "They will soon," Ashley replied. "And you can walk away from her now, or you can let her drag you down too." Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Bobby. "I'm with you, Dad." At Victor's firm, the cracks had become craters. Major clients began withdrawing accounts. The SEC reached out for voluntary interviews. Anonymous employees leaked emails confirming Victor had made multiple unauthorized transactions tied to nonprofits. Rumors of internal audits and financial collapses spread through Manhattan like wildfire. Victor called Linda 6 times that evening. She didn't answer. When he finally reached her, she was crying. "Everything's gone," she said. "The press. My reputation. My donors. You promised?" "I didn't promise to cover your tracks," he snapped. "You were sloppy. Oh, so this is my fault now. You're the one who brought your daughter into this. You let her humiliate you in public. You let Patricia get the upper hand. And what about Bobby?" she hissed. "He's pulling strings behind the scenes. I know it. I can feel it." Victor fell silent. Because she was right, and they were only getting started. Chapter 6. The Power of Ruthless Allies. The storm was no longer a quiet build. It was a Category 5 assault, and Bobby Donovan stood at the center, calm and methodical, like a general watching his enemies scramble in the mud while he played the game from an ivory tower. He met Patricia Hayes in a private suite overlooking Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling glass surrounded them. Behind the serene skyline, war was being waged in boardrooms and federal offices. Patricia, dressed in a slate-gray power suit, sipped espresso as she laid out a dossier of internal documents from Hayes Blackwood Investments. "The board split," she said crisply. 3 members loyal to Victor. For leaning toward me. The rest, weak and swayable. Bobby leaned forward, his voice like cut stone. "Then we break the loyal 3. Fast." Patricia smiled faintly. "Already started. 2 of them have offshore accounts they've been hiding from the IRS. A quiet nudge to the right ears, and they'll be begging to vote with me." Bobby smirked. "Ruthless. I'm learning from the best," she replied. That same morning, Bobby met with his in-house legal chief and his longtime fixer, Evan Blake, at Donovan HQ. Evan opened a silver case and laid out 3 sealed files. "FBI, IRS, SEC," he said, tapping each with a gloved finger. "Each one contains full documentation of fraud, wire transfers, falsified donor expense reports, and cross-border money laundering." Linda signed half of them. Victor signed the rest. Bobby didn't blink. "Send them. No more shadows." "Understood," Evans said. "Once they're in, it won't take long. The feds are hungry this year." Bobby sat back in his chair. "Then let them feast." In Manhattan's elite circles, the tremors spread like aftershocks from an earthquake. Linda Donovan once reigned at the center of that world. Champagne luncheons, fundraisers, gala panels, feature spreads in Architectural Digest and New York Society Quarterly. Now, her name triggered awkward silences and sidelong glances. She tried to fight back. A glossy op-ed appeared in the Atlantic Standard, ghost-written but bearing her byline. It painted a dramatic portrait of a woman manipulated by a controlling husband, punished for seeking love and meaning after decades of emotional neglect. "He weaponized our marriage," the article claimed. "He turned our children against me." But the comments section told another story. "You stole from sick kids and got caught. Your love was a married embezzler. Ashley Donovan is a national hero. You're a joke." The narrative was slipping fast. Meanwhile, Ashley sat confidently in the Donovan Global PR Command Center, a modern glass-and-steel room pulsing with screens and buzzing with data feeds. She stood before a digital wall showing trending keywords, public sentiment analysis, and media coverage heat maps. "All outlets have received the updated dossier," she said to her team. "I want headlines by 5 p.m. Focus on betrayal, on donor outrage, on the integrity of our brand. This isn't just a scandal. It's a takedown of corruption." A young staffer raised a hand. "A local news station is airing an exclusive with Linda tonight." Ashley nodded. "Pre-recorded?" "Yes." "Counter it with a live interview." "CNBC wants 5 minutes with Dad." "Confirm it. He goes on air the moment Linda finishes." "Got it." Ashley's voice softened slightly. "And make sure we issue statements from at least 2 nonprofits praising Dad's integrity. We'll bury her with kindness and facts." She turned, the corner of her mouth twitching. Let her drown in her own lies. At Hayes Blackwood, Patricia's offensive intensified. The board convened on the 46th floor in a high-security session. Patricia entered with 2 lawyers and a prepared motion for emergency vote of no confidence against Victor Hayes. Victor hadn't even shown up in person. He was dialing in remotely, clearly rattled. "You're a parasite, Patricia," he snapped through the speaker. You're using this scandal to feed your own ambition. No, Patricia said coolly, placing a stack of folders on the table. I'm cleaning up a cesspool, starting with you. The board members flipped through the files, proof of unauthorized transfers, insider trading rumors, and donor money that had gone missing through conveniently mislabeled departments. Victor's voice began to tremble. This is an ambush. It's a reckoning, Patricia cut in. You have until the end of this vote to resign quietly, or I go public and burn every bridge you have. The vote was unanimous. Victor was removed as CEO within 24 hours. Linda, meanwhile, tried reaching out to old allies. She called Senator Whitmore, who once co-chaired her pediatric fund. He didn't return her call. She texted Elena McGrath, a billionaire philanthropist and once her closest society friend. Elena, I need your help. This is spiraling. You know me. You know I'd never. The reply was swift and brutal. We thought we knew you. Please don't contact me again. Linda stood in her kitchen, phone in hand, and finally felt it. Not just isolation. Exile. At Donovan Tower, Bobby watched Linda's failed PR campaign unfold with the calm of a man who already knew the ending. His phone buzzed. It was Ashley. She's trying to spin the sympathy card, she said. Blaming you, blaming us. It's failing. Good, Bobby said simply. And Patricia? Ashley asked. She just gutted Victor's board. She's CEO now. Ashley let out a short laugh. God, I love her. She earned it, Bobby replied. We all did. There was a pause. I'm proud of you, Dad, Ashley said finally. I know this wasn't how you wanted any of it to go. No, he said, eyes still on his laptop screen, where headlines lit up like war trophies. But I'll finish it now, the right way. As dusk settled over Manhattan, the city glimmered like molten gold, unaware that two titans, once entangled in love, betrayal, and legacy, were now being dismantled, not by fire or scandal alone, but by patience, precision, and the power of allies who refused to blink. And at the heart of it, Bobby Donovan sat with a quiet resolve. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had gained something rarer, righteous purpose, and he wasn't alone anymore. Chapter 7. The Collapse. It started with a convoy of unmarked black SUVs rolling to a stop outside Hayes Blackwood Investments just after 8 a.m. Sharp suits, mirrored sunglasses, and flak vests emerged in practiced unison. The glass doors opened with a reluctant hiss, and the receptionist barely had time to react before federal agents flooded the lobby. FBI, step away from the desks. Papers fluttered as a dozen employees froze mid-sentence, phones still pressed to their ears. Elevators were secured. The executive wing was sealed. Agents marched down the corridors with a confidence that made fear bloom like fire in every cubicle. On the 32nd floor, Victor Hayes stood behind his desk, mid-call, a trembling coffee mug in hand when the door burst open. Victor Hayes, an agent barked. Victor turned pale. Yes, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, embezzlement of nonprofit funds, and conspiracy to defraud. Cameras clicked as another agent read him his rights. A news chopper hovered just outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Victor's knees buckled as the cuffs clicked shut. Across the city, Linda Donovan stared at her phone screen in her Upper East Side condo, eyes wide, mouth open in disbelief. The news app headline screamed, FBI raid Victor Hayes' investment firm in charity embezzlement case. She barely had time to process it before a knock came at her door. 3 hard raps. She opened it to find 2 stern federal agents and a badge. Linda Prescott Donovan. Her lips parted. Yes, you're under arrest. No, wait, I didn't. There's been a mistake. Her voice rose in pitch, shrill and brittle. I was manipulated. This was Victor's. He tricked me. They didn't care. The cuffs bit into her wrists. As they led her away, flashbulbs erupted from paparazzi stationed across the street. In a penthouse overlooking the park, Bobby Donovan stood by his window, a glass of scotch in hand, calm as a chess master watching the last piece fall. He didn't flinch as the images rolled on the television. Victor being hauled into a black SUV. Linda sobbing in designer handcuffs. News anchors discussing the fall of a power couple entangled in one of the most brazen misuses of nonprofit funds in recent memory. Ashley entered the room, tablet in hand. "It's all over the wires," she said. "Every channel's on it. We got the exclusive to The Guardian. NBC's covering it in the 6 o'clock slot." Bobby didn't look away from the glass. "Good." Ashley glanced at the screen and smirked. "Think they're surprised?" "They were warned," he said. "I told her once years ago that the world doesn't protect liars forever." Ashley leaned against the desk. "And yet they always think they're different." Later that day, Patricia Hayes stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by cameras and microphones. She wore a black sheath dress and a crimson coat that popped against the gray sky. Her voice was cold, deliberate, and unwavering. "I came here today not as a scorned wife, but as a citizen who believes in justice," she began. "For too long, Victor Hayes and Linda Donovan used their wealth and social status as shields to commit crimes that harmed children's foundations and violated the public's trust." Flashes erupted. She continued, steady as stone. "Let me be clear. Love affairs are unfortunate. Crimes are unforgivable. And what they did was criminal. They will answer to the law, just as any of us would." The crowd murmured, some applauding. To those who once praised Linda Donovan, "Now is the time to choose integrity over association," she added. "Because silence, in the face of corruption, is complicity." She turned and walked away without answering a single question. Powerfully. Precisely. In the elite circles Linda once ruled, silence spread faster than scandal. The High Ridge Foundation Gala removed her name from its guest list. The Children's Miracle Network posted a brief statement online thanking Bobby Donovan for his past contributions. No mention of Linda. Senator Whitmore deleted photos with her from his website. The subtle exile had begun. She tried to push back. Desperately. Dozens of text messages were sent to friends, former donors, political connections. "It's all been taken out of context. Victor coerced me. I didn't know about the shell companies. Please, just give me a chance to explain." No one replied. Not one. And then she tried the last person she had any hope of reaching. She called Bobby. The call rang once. Twice. Then, blocked. Inside her detention cell, Linda sat on a narrow bench, staring at the gray wall. Her face, usually sculpted with confidence and makeup, now looked gaunt and bare. She still wore her designer watch, though even that felt foreign now, like a relic from another life. She had always believed her charm, her name, her connections would save her. Now all she had was an orange wristband and a court-appointed lawyer. Victor fared worse. His firm collapsed within 48 hours of his arrest. 3 senior partners resigned in shame. Shareholders dumped stock by the hour, tanking the company's valuation. A temporary injunction was filed to freeze all assets. 2 of his luxury vehicles were repossessed before he even made bail. Patricia, ever thorough, made sure to issue a formal motion with the state to review his license to practice investment banking. He would never sit behind that desk again. Ashley kept the press firestorm burning at full blaze. She coordinated interviews with victimized nonprofits, arranged behind-the-scenes access for journalists, and ensured the internet never stopped talking. One viral clip showed Bobby arriving at a charity event, calmly signing a $2 million check to fund a new pediatric wing, right as news of Linda's charges dominated the ticker below. The message was clear. He was the legacy, not her. By the end of the week, Bobby sat with Ashley and Michael in the Donovan penthouse, watching the city fade into dusk. "Think it's done?" Michael asked. Bobby sipped his scotch. "It's just begun for them." Ashley smiled. "But for us, I'd say we're finally clean." They sat in silence for a while. No anger, no rage, only quiet satisfaction. Because revenge, when delivered with patience and precision, didn't need to shout. It only needed to be complete. Chapter 8. Courtroom Karma. The courtroom was a solemn cathedral of justice. Marble walls, wooden pews, the heavy air of consequence pressing down on everyone inside. Journalists filled the gallery, pens poised and cameras flashing silently through the glass partition. The judge, a stern woman with steel-gray hair and a sharp gaze, presided from a bench. Victor Hayes sat at the defendant's table, thinner than he had been, his trademark silver hair now dull and ragged. His $1,000 suits had been swapped for a navy blazer with federal-issued pants. His hands were clasped tightly in front of him, wrists slightly trembling. Beside him sat Linda Donovan. Her once regal posture collapsed into a defeated curve. Her makeup was light, her jewelry gone. Only her name remained, and it was in tatters. She had opted for a deal. Her lawyers had arranged for her to turn state's witness against Victor in exchange for leniency. The courtroom knew it. The media knew it. And Bobby Donovan, seated on the plaintiff's side, flanked by Ashley and Michael, knew it too. Linda rose to testify, walking slowly to the stand in pale heels, her steps careful, rehearsed. She placed a hand on the Bible and took her oath with a trembling voice. She avoided Bobby's eyes. "Ms. Donovan," the prosecutor began, "can you explain your role in the misappropriation of funds from the Children's Heartline Foundation?" Linda inhaled deeply. I wasn't aware at first," she said, her voice cracking. Victor told me it was standard practice, that the offshore accounts were for legitimate charitable tax structures. Did you approve those transfers?" She hesitated. "Yes, but I didn't understand what I was signing. I trusted him." From the plaintiff's bench, Ashley scoffed quietly. Bobby didn't react. Michael stared straight ahead, arms crossed. "And when did you become aware that funds were being embezzled?" The prosecutor pressed. Linda blinked rapidly, the first sign of performative tears. "Only a few months ago, when everything began to unravel. She looked around the courtroom, searching for sympathy. "I was manipulated." The judge's expression remained unchanged. "Did you benefit financially from these transfers, Mrs. Donovan?" Linda faltered, then nodded. "Yes, but not knowingly." The prosecutor handed her a printed email. "Is this your signature authorizing a $475,000 wire to a shell company in the Caymans?" She stared at it. Yes. But again, did you ask what it was for?" Silence. Linda looked toward Bobby for support. He didn't blink. Later, during cross-examination, Linda's voice lost whatever compassion it tried to evoke. Her answers grew defensive, her tone increasingly desperate. "I was a victim too," she insisted. The defense attorney raised an eyebrow. "You're saying a billionaire philanthropist with 2 decades of financial oversight experience had no idea millions of dollars were missing under her signature?" "I was trying to save my marriage," she mumbled. "Victor promised me a life." The gallery murmured. The judge slammed her gavel. "Order." When her testimony ended, Linda returned to the defense table, visibly shaken. Victor never looked at her. He stared down at the floor, expression unreadable. Then it was Bobby's turn. The prosecutor called him for the victim impact statement. The courtroom held its breath. He walked to the podium in a charcoal gray suit, no tie. His steps were calm, unhurried. He didn't bring notes. He didn't need them. "My name is Robert Donovan," he began. "Most people know me as Bobby. I built a hotel empire with my hands, my sweat, and my time. I gave 24 years of that life to a woman I thought I knew." He looked at Linda. She flinched. "I gave her love. I gave her children. I gave her the privilege of not worrying about the things I once did: rent, food, debt, survival." A pause. "And in return, she gave me betrayal so cold, it made the winter seem warm. But this," he gestured to Victor and Linda, "this wasn't just betrayal of a man. It was betrayal of good people. Children. Sick children who needed help, who needed funding. And instead, their money was used to fund yacht parties and designer handbags and offshore greed." Linda's eyes watered. Ashley stared straight at her, emotionless. Michael bowed his head. "I'm not here for revenge," Bobby continued, voice steady. "Revenge is personal. This is justice. And I trust that this court will deliver it without mercy, just as they delivered their crimes without conscience." He stepped back without another word. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. The judge cleared her throat. "Victor Hayes," she began, "your actions were deliberate, calculated, and cruel. You orchestrated a scheme that robbed not only donors, but children in need. You show no remorse. You took no responsibility. You are hereby sentenced to 28 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole before 15. Victor closed his eyes. The gavel struck. Linda Donovan, the judge continued, while your cooperation is noted, your actions remain reprehensible. You chose vanity and lust over duty and decency. You will serve 6 years in federal prison, with eligibility for supervised release after 4. Linda gasped, then covered her mouth with her cuffed hands. No, she whispered. Please, take them, the judge ordered. Federal marshals moved forward. Victor rose without resistance. A hollow man, a ruined legacy. Linda turned, eyes frantic, searching the gallery. She saw Ashley, who offered her nothing. She saw Michael, whose jaw was clenched so tightly it trembled. Then she found Bobby. Bobby, she cried out as the marshals grabbed her arms. Please, please, just look at me. Say something. Anything. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. He turned his gaze away, as if she had never existed. The doors shut behind them. Chapter 9. Rebuilding with Fire. The courtroom drama was over, but the work had just begun. In the sleek glass tower of Donovan Hospitality Group, the energy was electric. The suits, the meetings, the boardroom debates, all infused with a renewed sense of purpose. Bobby Donovan sat at the head of the long, polished table, no longer a man burdened by betrayal, but a titan forging his legacy anew. Ashley Donovan strode into the room, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She carried a thick binder of quarterly reports, her eyes bright with ambition. Dad, she began, the numbers are in from our European expansions. The client retention rate is up by 15%. The new luxury suites in Paris and Milan are booking faster than projected. Bobby nodded, a rare smile touching his lips. Excellent. Keep pushing. We're not just rebuilding, we're setting a new standard. Ashley's phone buzzed. She glanced down at a message, then looked up. Michael just sent me the final renderings for the Dubai project. He's incorporating some of the green technologies you requested. Bobby glanced toward the large floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. I like where this is headed. We needed to turn pain into purpose. And that's exactly what we're doing. Downstairs, in a refurbished corner office in the same building, Patricia Hayes sat behind her sleek mahogany desk, crisp and commanding. The former wife of Victor Hayes was no longer defined by scandal, but by resilience. Since taking over Hayes Blackwood Investments, she had spent every waking hour dismantling the remnants of her ex-husband's corrupt empire and rebuilding it on foundations of integrity. Her phone rang, displaying a Donovan Hospitality number. Patricia, Ashley answered warmly, we've just secured a major donation for the Bobby Donovan Scholarship Fund. The Taylor family pledged $2 million. Patricia's voice was steady and assured. Good news. The scholarship is the right step. We owe the next generation more than just words. Ashley smiled. Agreed. Speaking of which, the PR team is drafting the launch announcement. Bobby wants to make sure it highlights the legacy of integrity and second chances. Patricia leaned back, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Second chances, that's one thing I never got with Victor. But I'm grateful we're all channeling our losses into something that actually helps. Back at Donovan Tower, Ashley, Michael, and Bobby gathered for a rare family dinner on the expansive rooftop terrace. The city's lights shimmered below, the hum of life vibrant and unstoppable. Michael lifted his glass. To family. To rebuilding. Ashley clinked her glass. To rising from ashes. Bobby looked at both, pride evident in his voice. And to the future. The conversation flowed easily now, far removed from the bitter exchanges and cold silences that had once filled their home. Michael detailed his latest design concept, blending local culture with Donovan's signature elegance. I want every hotel to feel like a story told through architecture, he said. Sustainability, heritage, modern luxury, all in harmony. Ashley nodded approvingly. Your vision fits perfectly with our new brand identity. Dad's always said, it's not just about buildings, it's about creating experiences. Bobby smiled. Exactly. Weeks turned into months, and the Donovan empire only grew stronger. Ashley became the undisputed second in command, her sharp instincts and relentless drive steering new markets. She closed deals in Asia, Europe, and the Americas with the confidence of a seasoned mogul. Michael's design firm, Donovan Creative, expanded internationally. His innovative concepts won awards and set new industry standards. Bobby, now more mentor than manager, savored moments watching his children thrive, knowing that the pain of betrayal had forged a family stronger than before. Meanwhile, Patricia Hayes was transforming her company's image with surgical precision. She organized investor meetings to repay those defrauded by Victor's schemes. She personally apologized to nonprofits victimized by the scandal, often visiting them with donations and new partnership proposals. The press began calling her a woman of iron will and a phoenix rising from the ashes of scandal. In a quiet moment, Patricia reflected on how far she'd come. She kept a small photo on her desk, one from happier days with Victor and their children. But it was no longer a symbol of loss. It was a reminder of the strength born from survival. Letters arrived at Donovan Tower, thin envelopes postmarked from a federal prison in Oregon. Each was from Linda Donovan. The notes were filled with regret, pleas for forgiveness, and hints at changed perspectives. Yet, none were opened. Ashley disposed of them without a word. Michael and Bobby agreed silently. There was no place for her anymore. 2 years after sentencing, the news came quietly but definitively. Victor Hayes had suffered a massive stroke in prison. His funeral was a hushed affair, held far from the public eye. Few attended. No family, no friends, just an empty chair and the faded legacy of a man who had once wielded power like a king. Back in New York, as the dust settled, Bobby's name climbed even higher in the world of luxury hospitality and philanthropy. At a gala held in his honor, luminaries from around the globe toasted his vision and perseverance. Ashley stood beside him, radiant and confident. Michael smiled, his creative spirit recognized by critics and peers alike. And Patricia, now a respected titan of finance and justice, looked on proudly from across the room. Bobby caught Patricia's eye and nodded. She smiled back, a silent acknowledgement of battles won and new paths forged. Together, they had torn down the ruins of betrayal and built something real. That night, as Bobby looked out from his penthouse, the city lights flickering like stars below, he felt a quiet peace. He had lost much, but he had gained more. A legacy rebuilt with fire. Chapter 10. Epilogue, Legacy of the Betrayed. The morning sun spilled golden light over the terracotta roofs of Rome as Robert Bobby Donovan stepped onto the terrace of the newly opened Donovan Palazzo Hotel. The warm breeze carried the faint scent of jasmine and freshly baked bread from a nearby cafe. It was a world away from the cold boardrooms and harsh courtroom lights that had marked the last 5 years of his life. Standing beside him were Ashley and Michael, his children, both radiant with the glow of accomplishment. Ashley's tailored navy blazer caught the sunlight as she adjusted the lapel and smiled. The reviews are already glowing. Travel Lux called it a masterpiece of modern luxury and timeless elegance. Michael, who had just returned from overseeing the final touches in the hotel's private spa, nodded. It's everything we envisioned, combining local Roman artistry with Donovan's signature sustainability. The rooftop garden is already a guest favorite. Bobby surveyed the breathtaking view, the ancient city beneath their feet, the Colosseum in the distance, a vibrant tapestry of history meeting the future. He felt a rare calm settle in his chest. Ashley looked at him, a spark of affection and pride in her eyes. It's incredible to think how far we've come, from the chaos of the past to this moment. Bobby smiled, not with triumph, but with quiet satisfaction. We didn't just survive. We rebuilt everything stronger. Michael chimed in, and with every project, we're honoring the legacy Dad fought so hard to protect. As the three stood there, their phones buzzed simultaneously with messages of congratulations from business partners and media outlets. But Bobby ignored the distractions. For a moment, it was just them and the city that had witnessed centuries of empires rise and fall. Across the Atlantic, in a sunlit office in Geneva, Patricia Hayes flipped through photographs from the Rome opening gala. The walls were lined with awards and letters of commendation from global humanitarian organizations. The charity she now helmed, the Global Children's Trust, was expanding rapidly, providing scholarships, healthcare access, and emergency aid in war-torn regions. Her husband, a renowned economist named Mark Delacroix, entered the room with a smile. "They want you to keynote the World Philanthropy Summit next month." Patricia smiled, a calm confidence glowing in her eyes. "It's time to share what we've learned about resilience, justice, and how to rebuild with integrity." Mark wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "You've done what few could, turn pain into power." She nodded. "Because we had no choice." Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in a small town in Oregon, Linda Donovan lived in quiet obscurity. The harsh neon of the prison visitation center was a distant memory, replaced now by the soft light filtering through lace curtains in her modest living room. She sat alone at a chipped wooden table, letters unopened stacked in neat piles, notes from lawyers, old friends, and occasional, desperate missives to her children. The walls were bare, save for a faded photograph of Bobby and the kids from happier times. Her days were punctuated by long walks through the local park and evening prayers whispered into the night. She had tried, a few times, to reach out to Ashley and Michael. Text messages, phone calls, emails, all unanswered. She remembered the last voicemail she left on Ashley's phone. "Please, just one conversation. I'm sorry. I'm trying to change." No reply. Her tears came silently. Back in Rome, Bobby stood alone for a moment on the terrace, watching the sun dip toward the horizon. The warm breeze tousled his silver hair, carrying with it the faint echoes of the past. He thought of Linda, her charm, her bitterness, her betrayals. Of Victor Hayes, the man who had tried to break him. Of the long legal battles, the court hearings, the media storms. And of the family that had stood by him. Ashley, Michael, and even Patricia. His gaze softened. A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. Ashley stepped up beside him, handing him a glass of aged Italian wine. "To us," she said simply. "To family," Bobby replied, clinking his glass to hers. They stood in companionable silence. Later, seated in the hotel's grand lounge, Bobby reflected on everything. Betrayal had been a knife in his back. Revenge had been a firestorm. But justice had been a long, steady river that cleansed and restored. His empire was no longer just buildings or bank accounts. It was legacy, loyalty, love rebuilt stronger than before. He thought about the scholarship foundation they'd launched in his name, offering opportunities to deserving students worldwide, the kind of chances he wished he'd had. He thought about Patricia, who had transformed pain into a mission that was changing lives globally. And he thought about his children, strong, fierce, and unbreakable. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Ashley. "Dinner reservation at IL San Lorenzo tonight. Family only." He smiled. For the first time in years, Bobby Donovan felt at peace. He didn't just win. He rebuilt everything stronger.